In the bustling cafeteria of the alien station, the whispers were louder than the clatter of trays. Her name was Lyra, and she sat alone on the cold stone bench, the sharp stares of the others piercing her skin. Green skin, white hair, she was different, but not in the way they appreciated. They called her weak. They said her blood was impure. The alien race surrounding her had seen what they wanted in her, an easy target. Her heritage was mixed, and that made her less than they were. It was a cruel, unspoken rule, and no one dared break it. They all looked at her as though she didn't belong. Pathetic, one of the taller aliens muttered, his voice just loud enough for her to hear. He wasn't even trying to be quiet. A hybrid. She doesn't even have the strength to fight for herself. She felt the words as they struck her like physical blows, but she refused to react. Instead, she stared at her half-eaten meal, pretending she hadn't heard them. But the truth was, they were right. At least, that's what Lyra had been taught to believe her whole life. Her father, a human who had long since vanished, had left a legacy of shame behind. Her mother, a strong, proud alien woman, had raised her alone. But the words that hurt the most came from those she thought would understand. "You'll never be like us, Lyra," her mother would often say. "You can never be powerful enough." Power. That was all that mattered here. The aliens ruled everything, their technology, their strength, their arrogance. They looked down on her because she was different, and she let them. Until today. A human had just walked into the cafeteria. At first, no one noticed him. He was just another human, one of the many they'd captured from the nearby planets. But this one was different. He wasn't wearing the usual shackles of defeat. He walked with his head high, eyes scanning the room. It was almost like he didn't belong there, but in a way that made him stand out. And when his eyes met hers, something shifted. He didn't look away, unlike the others. His gaze lingered a little longer than necessary. She felt a strange heat rush through her. Was it curiosity? Or something else? For a moment, the entire cafeteria seemed to quiet, the world around her fading away. She couldn't breathe, her heart pounding in her chest as the human approached her. The others didn't notice. They were too busy watching their own kind, snickering and laughing at her expense. But this human? He wasn't laughing. He stopped in front of her, his strong, muscular build only a foot away. His eyes, they were different from the others. There was something there, something unspoken. "You're eating alone," he said, his voice smooth, almost playful. "I think we can change that." He held out a tray of food to her, a cheeky grin spreading across his face. "I'm no expert, but I think you deserve better than this." She stared at the tray, her mind racing. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No alien had ever dared approach her with such ease, with such confidence. It made her feel vulnerable, and yet, at the same time, powerful. She didn't know why, but her fingers brushed against his as she took the tray. A soft electric shock shot up her arm, and she quickly pulled back, embarrassed. Was that his touch? Or was it something in the air? She tried to shake it off, but the feeling lingered. The human didn't move. Instead, he smirked. "You seem like you could use some company," he said, sitting down beside her on the bench without waiting for an invitation. "They all like to pretend they're better than you, but I can see through it." Lyra glanced at the group of aliens, who were still oblivious to the scene unfolding. They were too caught up in their own superiority to notice how the power dynamics were shifting. "Why?" she asked quietly, unsure of what to make of this strange encounter. "Why would you care about someone like me?" The human leaned in, his voice low, teasing. "Because," he said, his breath warm against her ear, "I don't think weakness has anything to do with skin color or heritage. It's about what's inside. And I see something in you, Lyra. Something special." Her heart skipped a beat. Was he serious? Or was this just another game? "You shouldn't be here," she murmured, her voice barely a whisper. "You don't understand how it works. They'll never accept me. I'm too different." He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he reached out and gently touched her arm. The electricity between them was undeniable. "Then let's change that," he said, his eyes locking with hers. For the first time, Lyra felt a spark of hope, something she hadn't felt in years. She looked away, unsure of how to handle it. Was this man a fool for thinking she could stand up to the aliens? Or was he someone who truly believed in her? The moment lingered between them, charged with anticipation. The other aliens were still busy with their food, unaware of what was about to happen. But Lyra knew something had shifted. She felt it deep inside. What if the human was right? What if she wasn't weak after all? What if there was a chance for her to prove them all wrong? But as she looked back at the human, she realized that the consequences of defying the aliens would be far greater than she could ever imagine. And then, just as the tension reached its peak, a voice interrupted their moment. "You're playing with fire," the voice sneered. Lyra turned to see one of the alien elites, a tall figure with glowing blue eyes, staring down at them. "You think you can just come here and change things?" he mocked. "You think a human can save you?" Lyra's heart raced. She didn't know what to do. But she knew one thing for sure: the game had just begun. Suspense. Would the human truly help her? Or was he leading her into a trap? Naughty question for comments. Do you think Lyra should trust the human? Or is he just another game for the aliens to play? Let us know what you think in the comments below. The cafeteria buzzed with whispers, the noise from the alien patrons growing louder with every passing second. Lyra sat still, her fingers gripping the tray as though it were her lifeline. The human, his name was Gabriel, had just sat next to her, an unspoken challenge hanging between them. The aliens, still busy with their own meals and games, hadn't noticed the shift. But Lyra had. The air felt charged, thick with something that was both exhilarating and dangerous. Gabriel's gaze lingered on her for a moment longer than necessary. He caught her eye, his smile playful, almost teasing. "You know," he said, voice low but deliberate, "they think you're nothing. Weak. But I see something different." He took a bite of the food on his tray, his eyes never leaving her face. "You're stronger than they give you credit for." Lyra swallowed hard. "You don't know what it's like," she replied quietly, her voice barely audible. "I've spent my whole life trying to fit in, trying to prove that I'm worth something. But it's never enough. I'm not like them." Gabriel leaned in slightly, his face now inches from hers. "What if I told you that you don't need to be like them? You don't need their approval." His lips curled into a smirk. "You just need to show them you're stronger than they think." Lyra couldn't help but feel a spark of hope flicker inside her. It wasn't a feeling she was used to, and it made her nervous. "How? How am I supposed to do that?" she asked, her voice wavering just a little. He leaned back, his eyes glinting with a mischievous twinkle. "By not letting them control you. By showing them you don't need their approval to be powerful." His tone shifted then, turning more serious. "It's all about strength, Lyra. Physical strength is one thing. But mental strength? That's what gets you control." Lyra hesitated, her eyes drifting to the alien elites who were still engaged in their conversations, looking at her with disdain. "They'll never accept me," she whispered. "Not after everything they've said. They'll never see me as one of them." Gabriel's smile softened as he placed his hand on her arm, the touch sending a shock through her skin. "That's because you're not one of them, Lyra. You're better." He gave her a sly wink. "You just need to show them." The confidence in his voice was like nothing she'd ever heard. He wasn't just talking, he believed it. And somehow, that belief gave her a sense of strength, a feeling she had long forgotten. But the road ahead wouldn't be easy. The aliens would never accept a hybrid like her, and if she challenged them, the consequences would be severe. Yet, for the first time, the thought of defying them didn't feel so impossible. The human's words echoed in her mind, "You don't need their approval." She knew Gabriel was right. She didn't need to be like them. She didn't need to fit into their mold. She needed to show them that she was in control of her own fate, and that power didn't come from their approval. It came from within. "All right," she said, her voice steady, almost a whisper. "Let's see if I can show them that I'm not weak." Gabriel's grin widened, his eyes filled with approval. Now that's the Lyra I wanted to see. Before she could say anything else, an alien elite, one of the taller, more intimidating ones, approached them. His eyes narrowed as he took in the sight of Lyra sitting with the human. "What's this?" he sneered. A hybrid, fraternizing with the human filth. His voice was sharp, dripping with disdain. Lyra's heart skipped a beat, but she forced herself to hold her ground. Gabriel, ever the playful one, leaned forward with a grin. "I think it's time someone showed you that strength isn't about bloodlines." His tone was teasing, but the words carried an undeniable weight. The alien's eyes flicked between Gabriel and Lyra, his lip curling in disgust. "You should learn your place, hybrid," he spat. "And you?" He turned to Gabriel, his gaze burning with anger. "You're an embarrassment to your kind." But Gabriel didn't flinch. Instead, he chuckled. "You know," he said casually, as if he were talking about something trivial, "I think you're just mad because you can't control her." The alien elite's face twisted with fury. "You're making a mistake, human. You have no idea what you're getting into." Lyra, still processing the exchange, looked up at Gabriel, her heart racing. He wasn't scared. He was confident, unbothered by the alien's threats. And somehow, that made her feel stronger. She wasn't just standing there alone anymore. She had someone who saw her for who she really was. "Let's prove them wrong, together," Gabriel said, his voice steady and full of promise. Lyra took a deep breath, feeling the fire inside her ignite. The challenge had been set. She wasn't going to be the one who ran anymore. She wasn't going to hide in the shadows of the alien's judgment. It was time to show them what a true challenge looked like. Suspense. But what would happen when the aliens finally decided to take action against her? And would she be able to rise to the occasion, or would their power crush her once again? Naughty question for comments. Do you think Lyra is ready to challenge the aliens? Or is she setting herself up for failure? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Lyra could feel the weight of the alien elite's words still hanging in the air. His insults had stung, but they didn't have the same effect they once would have. For the first time, she didn't feel small. She didn't feel the need to shrink back, to apologize for her existence. Instead, something inside her burned, something she couldn't ignore. Gabriel's presence beside her was a constant source of strength. The human, who was just supposed to be a prisoner like the rest of them, had become her unexpected ally. As they walked away from the cafeteria, his words still echoed in her mind. Strength isn't about bloodlines, it's about showing them you don't need their approval. She wasn't sure what it meant yet, but she was ready to find out. Don't listen to them, Gabriel said, his voice low but steady as they moved through the corridors of the station. The elites don't know what real power looks like. She glanced up at him, the fire inside her growing. I'm done letting them tell me who I am, she replied, her tone more confident than it had ever been before. I'm not weak. I won't hide anymore. Gabriel smirked, obviously pleased by the change in her. That's the Lyra I've been waiting to see. As they rounded the corner, they found themselves facing an even more daunting challenge, a group of alien soldiers standing guard at the door to the command center. These soldiers were known for their ruthless discipline and their absolute loyalty to the alien elite. There was no way around them. But Lyra wasn't backing down, not this time. She glanced at Gabriel, who raised an eyebrow as if to say, ready for this? I'll take the lead, Lyra said, her voice barely a whisper. The thought of facing these soldiers head-on should have scared her, but it didn't. In fact, she felt a strange sense of power building inside her, a sensation she had never allowed herself to feel before. She stepped forward, her eyes meeting the cold, calculating gaze of the soldier standing at the front. Move aside, she commanded. Her voice was steady, but it held a sharp edge that she had never known she could produce. I have business with the elites. The soldier didn't move, his expression unreadable. You know the rules. No one enters without clearance. Gabriel stood behind her, a slight grin on his face. She doesn't need clearance. She's the one you should be afraid of. Lyra could see the moment of hesitation in the soldier's eyes. He was trying to gauge whether or not he should follow the rules, or whether he should take a risk. The fact that Gabriel, a human, was so confident in her power was unexpected. But it made her feel stronger. If he believed in her, maybe she could start believing in herself, too. The soldier stepped aside, his face tight with resistance. This isn't over, he muttered. I think it just began, Lyra said, a smirk tugging at the corner of her lips. She and Gabriel walked through the doors, the command center looming in front of them like a fortress. It was exactly what she had imagined, cold, impersonal, and filled with figures who were too busy with their own power plays to care about anyone else. But as Lyra entered the room, she felt the shift again. The elites turned to her with raised eyebrows, but it wasn't the same disdain she had always felt. There was something else, something she couldn't quite name yet, but it made her stand taller, more assured of her place in this room. One of the elites, the tall alien she had clashed with earlier, stepped forward. His glowing blue eyes narrowed as he studied her. What are you doing here? He asked, his tone dripping with disbelief. Lyra stood firm, her heart pounding in her chest. She had to prove herself. To them. To herself. I'm here to show you that I don't need your permission to exist. I don't need your approval to be powerful. The elite laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think you can just walk in here and take control? You're a hybrid. You're nothing. Lyra's eyes flared with anger, but she kept her voice calm. You're wrong. She stepped forward, closing the distance between them. I am everything you can't control. And I'm not going anywhere. Gabriel, who had been quietly standing by her side, stepped up as well, his voice casual but laced with intensity. She's not just some hybrid. She's your worst nightmare. For the first time, the elite seemed unsure. Their confidence faltered for just a moment as they looked at each other. But then the tall alien sneered again, a cruel smile forming on his face. You think we're afraid of you? You don't even know what power is. Lyra took a deep breath, steadying herself. I'll show you what power looks like. Before anyone could react, the room went silent. The tension in the air was thick, and it felt like the entire station was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. And then, just as quickly as it had come, the silence was broken by a loud, menacing laugh. The elites began to speak again, this time with a hint of fear in their voices. But before Lyra could react, the ground beneath them began to shake. The lights flickered. The station's alarms blared, signaling an emergency. Something was wrong. What is this? One of the elites demanded, his voice filled with panic. Lyra turned to look at Gabriel, but before she could say anything, they were interrupted by a voice she hadn't expected to hear. You've made a mistake, the voice echoed through the speakers. And now you'll pay for it. Suspense. Who was speaking? And what had Lyra and Gabriel unleashed by walking into the command center? Naughty question for comments. Do you think Lyra's bold move was the right choice? Or has she just made a dangerous enemy? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. The voice echoed through the command center like an ominous warning, vibrating in the walls of the room. Lyra's heart raced as she tried to make sense of what had just happened. The shaking beneath her feet grew more intense, and the flashing lights made it feel like the entire station was alive with tension. Gabriel stood beside her, his hand almost instinctively moving to rest on her arm, as though ready to protect her, but in that moment, he looked just as uncertain as she felt. What the hell is going on? Lyra muttered, glancing around, her breath shallow. The elite aliens were no longer standing with their usual arrogance. There was a panic in their eyes, a crack in their perfect composure that told her everything had changed. They've activated the lockdown, one of the elites said, his voice sharp with fear. No one gets out until they're finished with whatever this is. Lyra's stomach twisted. A lockdown? It was exactly what she had feared. The elites wouldn't let her challenge them without consequence. The question now was, what would they do to her? A loud, distorted sound crackled over the speakers again. You think you're in control? You think you can just waltz in here and change things, the voice said, a mocking tone threading through its words. You're nothing but a tool. You'll never escape what's coming. The elite alien who had sneered at her earlier stepped forward, his face pale but still full of arrogance. You've gone too far, hybrid. There's no turning back now. Lyra swallowed hard. You think I care about turning back, she snapped, feeling the heat of anger rise in her chest. I'm not your toy. And I'm not your servant. I've had enough of hiding in your shadow. Gabriel's smirk returned. He leaned toward her, his voice low and full of that same playful energy she had come to rely on. That's the spirit. They won't know what hit them. Suddenly, the sound of metal doors sliding open reverberated through the command center. The air felt charged, heavy with anticipation. A new group of soldiers entered, armored, heavily armed, and ready to fight. These were the elite's personal guards, and their presence only confirmed one thing: this was no longer just a confrontation. This was about survival. The elite leader, still sneering, pointed toward Lyra. Take her down. Now. But just as the guards began to move, Gabriel stepped forward, his eyes narrowing with defiance. You really think you can control her? His voice cut through the tension like a blade. If you do, you'll have to go through me first. One of the soldiers stepped toward him, raising his weapon. We'll see about that, the soldier said, his voice cold. Without warning, the air was filled with the harsh sound of blasters charging. The moment seemed to stretch forever as Lyra and Gabriel exchanged a glance, a silent understanding. This wasn't just about showing power anymore. This was about taking control of their own futures. The soldiers were upon them in seconds. Gabriel moved first, quick as lightning, knocking the first soldier off balance with a swift punch. Lyra watched in awe, her heart pounding as she realized just how much strength he had. But it wasn't just his strength that impressed her, it was his unshakable confidence. Her gaze flicked toward the elite leader, who was standing back, watching the chaos unfold. His eyes narrowed in fury as he saw his guard struggling against a human and a hybrid. You dare, he snarled. But Lyra was already moving. She wasn't the helpless girl she used to be. With Gabriel beside her, she had learned that her strength wasn't just about her alien heritage, it was about her will to fight. She reached for a blaster lying on the floor, the weapon left by one of the fallen soldiers. She didn't hesitate. She aimed and fired at the nearest guard, her hand steady, her aim perfect. The guard fell to the ground, and the remaining soldiers paused, stunned by the sight of a hybrid standing tall, fighting back. They weren't used to this, no one ever fought back like this. Lyra's heart raced, but this time, it wasn't from fear. It was from something else, something that made her feel alive. Gabriel grinned at her, his face gleaming with pride. Not bad, Lyra. Not bad at all. The elite leader, seeing that his soldiers were failing, snarled in frustration. You've gone too far, he spat. You'll pay for this, all of you. But just as he took a step forward, a loud crash echoed through the room, and the floor beneath them began to shake again, this time more violently. What now? Lyra shouted, unable to keep the panic from creeping into her voice. Before anyone could answer, the door to the command center exploded inward, and a group of even more heavily armed soldiers stormed in. But these soldiers weren't like the others. They wore black armor, their faces hidden behind helmets. Their movements were synchronized, precise. And they weren't there to capture or subdue anyone. They were there to kill. One of the new soldiers, their leader, strode forward, his voice cold as ice. Everyone, step away from the elites. You're in the way now. Gabriel's expression hardened, and he immediately moved to protect Lyra. Who the hell are you? He demanded, his eyes narrowing. The soldier's voice was chilling. We're the ones who clean up after messes like yours. The elite leader, now visibly shaken, took a step back. "What's going on? Who are you working for?" The soldier turned to the elite leader, his voice almost pitying. "You really think you're still in control? The universe doesn't belong to you anymore. It never did." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. This was the moment. This was the turning point. She had no idea who these soldiers were, but one thing was clear: they weren't on the same side as the elites. They were about to change everything. Suspense. Who were these mysterious soldiers? And what did they mean for Lyra and Gabriel's fight against the elites? Naughty question for comments. Do you think Lyra and Gabriel can survive this deadly confrontation? Or are they walking into their doom? Let us know in the comments below. The black-armored soldiers surrounded the room like a storm, their movements so calculated, it was as if they had been trained for this very moment. Lyra's heart raced. The battle that had begun as a simple act of defiance had spiraled into something far bigger than she could have imagined. One of the soldiers, the leader, stepped forward. His helmet's faceplate reflected the flashing lights of the command center. "Everyone, stand down," he ordered, his voice cold and authoritative. "You've already lost." Gabriel stepped in front of Lyra, his posture tense, his expression sharp. "Not so fast," he said, his voice laced with defiance. "Who do you think you are, barging in here like you own the place?" The soldier didn't answer immediately. Instead, he surveyed the room, his eyes flicking from Lyra to Gabriel and then to the elite leader, who now stood frozen with shock. The elite leader, once the epitome of arrogance, seemed small now, as if the ground beneath him had crumbled. "Your empire is crumbling," the soldier said coldly, his voice echoing in the tense silence. "It's time for new rulers. Your reign is over." Lyra felt a strange sense of power bubble inside her. These soldiers, whoever they were, had come to her aid. They had come to end the reign of the elites, the same elites who had made her life miserable for as long as she could remember. For a moment, she almost felt like she could take control of everything. The power was intoxicating. But there was a price to pay for victory. The elite leader's eyes blazed with fury. "You think you can just walk in and take everything?" he spat, his voice dripping with venom. "You'll regret this. All of you." The soldier in front of Lyra reached for a device at his waist, activating a hologram that filled the room with a 3D map of the station. "It's already done," he said, tapping the hologram. "The station is ours now. There's nothing you can do to stop it." Gabriel shot Lyra a look, his expression softening for just a moment. He'd been with her every step of the way, his confidence never wavering, his playful nature never losing its spark. But now, there was a flicker of concern in his eyes. The elite leader raised his hand, as if he could still command his soldiers, but they didn't listen. They were on their knees, defeated. The elite's power, their grip on the station, had crumbled in the face of this sudden rebellion. And Lyra was caught somewhere between relief and fear. The leader's voice was low now, almost pleading. "You think you've won," he snarled. "This isn't over. You'll see what happens when you challenge the system." Lyra took a step forward, her voice steady and strong. "The system was broken long before we ever came here." She looked at Gabriel, who was watching her with that same pride in his eyes. "And we're the ones who are going to fix it." The soldier in front of her nodded, his expression still unreadable. "You've got the strength now. But you need more than that if you want to keep it." The room fell silent again. Lyra's gaze swept over the defeated elites, then back to the soldiers who had come to her aid. For a brief moment, she considered the cost of everything she had just done. The consequences of challenging the elites, of defying the very people who ruled the galaxy, were more than she could fully comprehend. But then, her thoughts were interrupted by the voice of one of the soldiers. "You've made your move," he said. "Now we'll see if you can hold your ground." The leader of the black-armored soldiers turned and looked directly at her. "Victory has a price, Lyra. You've earned your place, but you'll need more than just strength to lead. You'll need allies, strategy, and the will to see it through." Lyra clenched her fists, the weight of his words sinking in. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for something bigger, for a future that no one thought was possible. She turned to Gabriel, her heart filled with determination. "We're just getting started." Gabriel smiled at her, his usual playful grin now replaced with something more serious. "That's what I like to hear." His voice softened, a hint of flotation still there, but something more intense beneath it. "We're in this together. You're not alone anymore." For the first time, Lyra felt like she truly belonged somewhere. She had fought, she had stood her ground, and now she was in control of her own fate. But the journey wasn't over. It had only just begun. Suddenly, the ground shook once more, and the station's alarms blared louder than before. Lyra's heart skipped a beat. Something was wrong. She turned to the soldier leader, her breath catching in her throat. "What's happening now?" The soldier's expression hardened, his voice grave. "The elites may be defeated, but the real battle is just beginning." Suspense. What new threat was approaching? Had their victory truly been won, or was there something darker waiting in the shadows? Naughty question for comments. Do you think Lyra can handle the weight of leadership? Or will she falter under the pressure? Let us know what you think in the comments below. The alarms were deafening now. Lyra's pulse quickened as the sound echoed through the halls of the command center. Her mind raced, what's happening now? The ground beneath her feet vibrated again, and this time, it didn't feel like just a tremor. It felt like the beginning of something bigger. Something dangerous. The black-armored soldiers, who had been the key to her victory, were now scanning the surroundings, their movements swift and precise. They seemed prepared for anything, but Lyra wasn't so sure. She felt something in the air, something that didn't sit right. Her instincts were telling her this wasn't over. The voices of the defeated elite leaders echoed in her mind, taunting her, this isn't the end. You'll pay for this. Gabriel, ever the steady presence by her side, glanced at her. His eyes were serious now, not the playful, confident look he usually wore. Something's wrong, he said quietly, his voice carrying a hint of concern. Before Lyra could respond, one of the soldiers, an officer with a cold, calculating gaze, turned to her. You've done well, Lyra, he said, his voice emotionless. But now, we have to move quickly. The situation's changing. Her heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? What's going on? She demanded, stepping closer to him. The officer's lips curled into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. The elites may be down, but the real threat is still out there. Someone's pulling the strings, and we're about to find out who. The tension in the room thickened. The soldiers continued their scans, preparing for something, but what that something was, Lyra didn't know. Gabriel's hand brushed lightly against her arm, his fingers warm and reassuring. We'll handle it, he said, his voice low but filled with quiet determination. Together. She nodded, but something gnawed at her. She didn't fully trust these soldiers. She didn't trust anyone completely, not yet. They had helped her, but there was something about their leader, the officer, that didn't sit well with her. And then, in a split second, it happened. A loud, sharp noise echoed through the command center, a blaster shot, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps. Lyra's eyes snapped to the source of the sound. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. The officer, the one who had been so confident just moments before, was now holding a blaster, his weapon aimed directly at her. No! Gabriel shouted, stepping forward in an instant, but it was too late. The officer fired. Lyra's body jerked back, the pain sharp and immediate. But it wasn't as bad as she'd expected. The shot had grazed her side, barely. Still, the shock and betrayal cut deeper than the wound ever could. You, Lyra gasped, her voice hoarse. You were working with them all along. The officer's cold eyes never wavered. I was never on your side, hybrid. You were a tool. A distraction. A means to an end. And now that your usefulness is over, I have my orders. Gabriel was furious, moving to shield Lyra with his body. "You're a traitor," he growled, his voice low and full of rage. "I should have known." But the officer wasn't finished. "You should have. But you were too busy being the hero," he sneered, taking a step back. "Now, the real battle begins. You may have defeated the elites, but they'll make sure you pay for this. All of you." As the officer turned to leave, Lyra's mind raced. Betrayal. It had come from the most unexpected source. She had trusted these soldiers, trusted the officer. But now, that trust was shattered. And in its place was a burning anger that she had never felt before. "Get back here!" Gabriel shouted, but the officer was already gone, his footsteps echoing down the hall as he disappeared into the shadows. The room was silent, save for the whirring of machines and the distant sound of alarms. Lyra's breath came in short gasps, the pain in her side now burning as adrenaline wore off. But there was no time to dwell on it. Gabriel was still beside her, his eyes scanning the room, ready to act. "We've been set up," he said, his voice tight. "And now, we're on our own." Lyra's hands balled into fists. The officer had played her, and they'd let their guard down. But that was over now. "No more games," she said, her voice cold. She stood up, ignoring the sting from the wound in her side. "We'll deal with him later. But right now, we need to find out what's really going on." She turned toward the command center's controls, a fire burning in her chest. The betrayal stung, but it also lit a new fire in her, a fire of determination. She wasn't going to let anyone, especially not a traitor like the officer, stop her now. "Let's get to work," she said to Gabriel, her eyes steely with resolve. "We've got a galaxy to save." Suspense. Who was pulling the strings behind the scenes? And what was the officer's true purpose in betraying them? Naughty question for comments. Do you think Lyra should forgive Gabriel's betrayal, or is it too much to trust him again? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Lyra stood at the control panel, her hands gripping the console as she scanned through the data. Her heart was still racing from the betrayal, but there was no time for hesitation. The officer's treachery had shattered any illusion she had about trust. He had used her, manipulated her, just as the elites had done for so long. But now, she had a new fire within her. Betrayal had its price, and she was going to make sure those responsible paid for it. Gabriel stood beside her, his body tense and alert, but his expression was different now. No longer playful or teasing, his face was full of focus and determination. "So, what's the plan?" he asked quietly, his voice low but steady. Lyra's fingers flew over the control panel, pulling up schematics of the station, scanning for weaknesses, any hint of where they could strike next. The officer said something about the real battle starting. "If they're still pulling the strings, we need to find out who's in charge now." Gabriel raised an eyebrow, his gaze locking onto hers. "You really think we can take them down? Whoever they are." She met his gaze, her voice firm. "I have no choice. We're already in this deep. If we back out now, everything we fought for will be for nothing." The sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway, making them both freeze. Lyra's instincts kicked in, her body bracing for whatever was coming. The last betrayal had shattered her trust, and she wasn't about to let anyone get the jump on her again. But when the door slid open, it wasn't another group of soldiers. It was the soldier leader, the one who had been with them from the start. His helmet was off now, his face visible, and for the first time, there was something genuine in his expression. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice gruff but sincere. "I should have told you everything. But I couldn't. The officer who betrayed you, he's not just an ally of the elites. He's working with a faction much worse." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "What faction? And why didn't you tell us sooner?" Her voice was ice cold, her patience running thin. The soldier sighed, lowering his head. "Because we were outnumbered. And I knew you wouldn't trust me if I told you the truth. The officer, his group, they call themselves the True Order. They've been planning this takeover for years, using the elites as puppets. And now, they want to finish what they started. Gabriel stepped forward, his eyes blazing with anger. So, this whole thing was a setup? You've been playing us? The soldier shook his head. No. I didn't know about the officer's betrayal. But when we attacked the elites, we triggered their plan. The true order was waiting for the right moment to strike, and the officer was supposed to be their inside man. He was supposed to finish you off once the elites were out of the way. Lyra clenched her fists, her blood boiling. So we're just pawns in a bigger game. Her voice was thick with disdain. That's why they let me fight back, so they could see how strong I was. If they could control me, they could control the galaxy. The soldier looked pained but nodded. Exactly. The officer believed you were a tool to be used. But he underestimated you. Underestimated both of you. Gabriel crossed his arms, a dangerous calm settling over him. And what now? You want us to just take this lying down? To let this faction take control of everything we've fought for? The soldier's gaze softened. No. I'm here to help you. I've already contacted allies who can back us up. But we need to act fast. The true order is moving in. If we don't stop them, they'll take control of the entire station, and from there, they'll control everything. They've been waiting for years to make their move. Lyra turned back to the control panel, her mind racing. She wasn't going to let some shadow organization take control. She wasn't going to let them win, not after everything they had sacrificed. Her hand hovered over the station's command controls as she processed everything she had learned. No, she said finally, her voice filled with determination. We take the fight to them. If they want control, we'll show them just how strong we are. It's time to take back everything they think they own. Gabriel gave her a small smile, his voice steady. I'm with you. Always. The soldier nodded in agreement. I'll help you get to the heart of their operations. But we need to be quick. They're already moving into position. Lyra's mind raced. This was it. This was the final stand. She wasn't going to let anyone, whether it was the elites or this true order, control her or anyone else. She was done being the pawn. It was time to play the game on her terms. She stood tall, the weight of what was to come settling over her. Let's move. We take back the station, and we take back our future. No more running. No more hiding. They all moved quickly, preparing for the final battle, the one that would determine everything. The stakes were higher than ever, but Lyra was ready. With Gabriel by her side, and new allies in tow, she wasn't going to stop until she had taken back everything they had fought for. Suspense. The battle was far from over. With the true order now revealed, would Lyra and Gabriel be able to stop them before it was too late? And could they trust their new allies, or was this just another betrayal waiting to happen? Naughty question for comments. Do you think Lyra and Gabriel can defeat this true order? Or will they face even more betrayal ahead? Let us know what you think in the comments below.